Hey, 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 Laura J here to say we are talking empowerment, energy, and facing intense emotions with community support. What does that look like? Well, if you haven't heard about the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Initiative yet, then I very much look forward to being able to be the one to introduce you to it. And where intense emotion is concerned, it's an opportunity for you to see how your emotions can get stuck in a past tense or a future tense or a present tense, which is ultimately where our power truly lies. And then we see the bigger guise of being able to create structures and sentence structures. And then within the sentence, are we creating a life sentence or a death sentence? I want you to think about your emotions. I want you to think about mental health. And I want you to think about our cultural tendency to wound out with one another and connect through our common wounds. Let me tell you my story of victimization, trauma, drama, where I was hurt, harmed, injured, left, abandoned, somehow made to be less than what I am or treated as less than what I am worth in the scheme of things. And then you say, oh, you think that's bad? Listen to my story. And then you tell me yours, and you wound out with me even harder to make sure that you and I are on the same page in terms of how wounded we have been. Carolyn Myss calls that woundology. And we have been connecting that way for far too long, wouldn't you agree? It would seem that now we have a chance to actually rise above all of that and lance those boils that would keep us toiling in a not now moment where none of our power exists. It is time for us instead to shift so that we can actually lift our spirits by lifting our vision, to see the intuition as the teacher our soul hired ahead of time to guide us through this lifetime as us, even though our soul knew it would not be easy to make it through the valley of transformation, as every hero must do. We agreed to come here anyway. You see how important you are? Your intense emotions that show up as anxiety or depression, or deep and heavy emotions that are energies in motion we don't know how to move, are very insecure aspects of ourselves. And it's time to build a stronger sense of inner security. My computer is going slow, and I bet your experience is being interfered with for it too. It's time to build a stronger sense of inner security so that we can connect through healthier means than we've been. And once we know of better, then we can do better. Oh, and it's true, you will do what you feel called to do. Don't you see how we've been deceived to believe that we are less than the truth is we are more than the sum of our parts? I very much look forward to being here with you, and I'm so glad that we're here and we're doing what the one to required as we become the one we've wished before would save us from ourselves. And instead we say, Now I've become a good friend to me, and I hope you will to yourself as well. It is true that I send you love and hope and all good things. Oh, it's true. You have been the one you've been waiting for. So empowerment, what is it? Energy, what is it? Intense emotions, what are they? All connected, I'd say. Empowerment is that sense of power we have within ourselves when we see how we have been the ones empowering that which is outside of us because we gave it our power and thought it was more powerful because we were powerless, having given it ours. That's what the corpse is empowered by, and therefore we can take it back at any time. It's energy. That's what all things are, energy. In a universe that cannot create nor destroy energy, it can only be transmuted. Therefore, it is time for us to see that all things are just different forms of the original substance. Or is it all the same substance in different forms that have become norms that we would say these are better forms than those? So do these and not those, and then we'll be in good standing. But I say instead, why don't we just actually have standing in matters that we are involved in personally, and then make sure that any man or woman that also speaks has standing too, lest they only just show up to status and pose and get paid to do so, which has been the way the legal fiction and its diction have been dictating our moves, which I say, I don't like to groove that way. So that's fun. I did want to actually speak more into the intense emotions though, because I had a message from a gentleman who said that he would like to break out of his comfort zone in order to actually get over the anxiety that he developed when he was about 19, when he stopped smoking. And basically, he ended up needing to get medicated, self-medicated. And the self-medication was different, actually. It wasn't self-medication. He took actual medication for many years and then went off of it, and then basically started to feel like he was going to have a heart attack when the emotions started to actually rise, and he didn't know how to deal with it because for 4 years he'd suppressed that, so he didn't have to feel that. But the problem is when we suppress the lows, we also suppress the highs too. So if we just stay even keel all the time, it gets pretty boring, wouldn't you say? Well, it's time for us to stop fearing our emotions and to simply recognize that as we step into doing the inner work, we're going to have a lot of energies in motion that got suppressed, repressed, compressed, repressed, depressed, denied, rejected in the past. Those are going to show up in the now moment to be resolved because those intense emotions are still in the tense we left them in. So if that was in the past or in the future that we fear, they're stuck and we got to go retrieve them. And when they come back, they're not going to like us or trust us. We're not safe to them. We left them before. So we've got to rebuild that trust if we can. And ultimately, maybe we can't. But if we don't try, what do we have left? If we don't try, when we're asked the question, did you do your best? How will we answer? That is how we must start to look at things. And then to start to see that when the intense emotions show up in the now to be resolved, we've just got to simply be with them, not be activated by them, not go into judgment about them, not go into damage control even before they've had a chance to fully spread their arms and destroy that which they wish to, which sometimes when we actually let that which is just wanting to be free spread its arms, even though it might seem a bit chaotic and dangerous in a fragile environment, if we actually give space for that to happen, there can be adjustments made before danger comes into the frame as well. So do keep that in mind too, and simply see how energies in motion need to move. And when we suppress those, we develop momentums where that energy in motion is concerned, which is what the emotion is. So the next moment that we actually have that emotion show up, we get triggered with the momentums of all of the not now moments of that energy in motion, of that emotion that are showing up in the now to be resolved, because that's the only moment we ever can resolve anything. So when we start to think about it from that perspective, and then we start to be gentler with ourselves when we have those huge emotional reactions to something teeny tiny, and we're like, WTF, I thought I was doing all of this inner work. Clearly it's not working. Clearly I'm a failure. Clearly. And we go down this huge rabbit hole of negativity and how we're not good enough, because the universal story has always told us that, because it was convenient to keep us disempowered. It was best to keep our inner webs weak so that we wouldn't develop a sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-belief, and a sense of inner security that actually allows us to settle our own nervous system, which is how we start to feel safe within ourselves. That's how we develop inner security. We feel safe within ourselves. We no longer feel insecure, where we're not quite sure of what to expect, but we fear all of it because certainly something bad's coming, right? Wrong. Maybe, should the farmer say. In my favorite story that I have told so many times in the last few years since I first heard it, and even also got into Fully Committed, the Sacred Sojourn of Now. I am so excited to announce that my book here is going to actually be available in Chapters Indigo at the beginning of December. I don't know which ones specifically, but definitely some of the ones here in Ontario. So you can pick up your copy there, or you can message me direct. And if we're going to be connecting in your area, then certainly if you got a bookstore locally that you've got a relationship with that you think you could actually have a conversation with about getting my book in there, I'd be interested to do a book signing in some various locations in and around, and then also some book readings. And we're going to be doing more masterminds and community building and culture establishing type training calls, communication, conflict resolution, skills training. All of these are an opportunity for us to really strengthen our commitment to creating consciously the world that we are stepping into. So I hope that you will join for some of those opportunities. On meetup.com is where you will have the opportunity to check those out. And with that, I will simply say, in the now moment, which is where all time is only ever happening, when things show up to be resolved, instead of judging ourselves, it is time for us to simply move through those emotions by just observing and flowing and feeling. Feel all of it. And the more that you feel, the more whole you can become, because no longer do you fear those aspects of yourself that no longer need to stay away. They can just come draw near the fire, right? And you are very welcome, Blake. That is fantastic. I appreciate your messaging and asking the question. And so, to speak directly to the situation, if you are willing to actually go back to when you first started having anxiety, if you actually start seeing what was going on there and how your nervous system got stuck in a fight, flight, freeze, spawn, fornicate, fuck off experience where you were just like, it's too much. And then you go into the shutdown phase. That's the autonomic nervous system's two expressions of a dysfunctional nature. And then the third expression would be the more functional nature, which is where we're at right now with good vibes, and we're saying hi and it's great to have you here and I appreciate you. And it's a very different experience when your nervous system is settled, because I'm sharing information you understand is coming from my heart, and it's not coming from me wanting to sell you something. So there's no reason for you to have your guard up, right? Those are three expressions of the nervous system, which when we develop inner security, as I mentioned, that's how we actually build in some of those nervous system techniques. Learning how to settle your nervous system. In my book, Fully Committed, The Sacred Sojourn of Now, I actually shared how when I was locked up in the mental institution for those 2.5 weeks, about the fourth or fifth day in the system, I hadn't been sleeping. It was terrifying after the second place they shipped me. And then by the time I got to the third place, I was totally wired. And my nervous system was in total fight, flight, freeze, fuck off, holy shit, I don't even know what to do. Jesus, oh my God, just freak out mode, right? And then there was literally a point right before this experience that was just a game changer, league changer for me, that I totally intuitively did. And I wouldn't know how to explain it other than to just say it the way that I did it and say, how does that work for you? Because you need to test it to see if it's a tool you can use or whether it just worked for me. And I'm so grateful that it did when it did, because I needed it. But basically, I was in that freak out mode. And then you've also, at the other end of the spectrum, got the shutdown mode. And literally, I experienced what I call the possum effect, where it was just literally like I experienced the vampiric nature of the system. And I was tuned into the level of symbolism, or the symbolic level of reality, to such a level because my awareness was shifting. But the closer you get to the sun, the longer your shadow is too. And I wasn't realizing I was walking through my own karma, as we all do. And so as I was going through all of this, it was getting to be a pretty epic and wild, and just like, holy fuck, I don't even know what's true and like what's not. And like my entire identity had been shattered. My world had been shattered. And what is an identity but the ID entity? So the entity that I've come to identify with has now come to feed off of me, because if we don't own it, it owns us, right? And in that moment, I was experiencing what I was perceiving to be the vampiric nature of a system, where I was a patient and the nurse, I was trying to explain what I was sensing, or I was trying to see if I had an ally there. And he demonstrated clearly that he believed I needed to be there. He didn't believe in me or that I had anything valid to say or contribute. And it was just it could have been a really diminishing experience if I had given any of those authority figures my power, the way that many do when they go into an institution and feel trapped and just go into the shutdown mode, which I literally experienced the possum effect, where I passed out and I woke up on the floor and my water was spilled, and the nurse had to have seen it, because it happened after I basically turned away from them and just like went to get away, and then I passed out. And then I came to it. It was like, holy shit, this doesn't look good given my where I was being held at the time. And so I just avoided eye contact, picked up my container, left the water, and just walked back to my room. And nobody said anything about it, which I thought was one of many strange things, as I say in the book, Fully Committed, where I do talk about my experience and some of the crazy things that I experienced while in there, both literally, which I didn't have anything traumatic, seriously traumatic happen to me specifically, other than a few things that I have seen bigger pictures as to how these things fit into the bigger picture. And I'm at greater peace than I've ever been where all of it was concerned. But I had the experience recently while I was locked up of having literally passed out with the possum effect, because possums are not pretending to play dead. Possums are literally so terrified they pass out, and that's their nervous system shutting down entirely. And so there's the pass out, there's the freak out, and then there is the feel safe enough. And I remember after the fourth, fifth day that I'd been in there and just crazy shit was happening, and won't go into it here, but basically I just realized I had to surrender and decide to be where I was and to make the most of it, even if it was a living hell. And so I made that conscious decision, and I was so tired because I hadn't been able to sleep for multiple days at that point. And basically, I ended up doing this closed opening circuit exercise that I actually wrote in Fully Committed because it was so powerful for me. And basically, I put my left hand on my heart and my right hand on my belly. And then I put my two toes together. When I was breathing in, I closed my toes. I connected the big toes together, and I put my hands on my physical body. When I breathed in, so I was a closed circuit, and I breathed into the full capacity, and then I lifted my hands and I separated my toes and I breathed out. And as I did that, I envisioned myself being filled with peace, joy, those feelings, which are interpretations of energies in motion that make us feel safe, which allow us to stay present. Those states of being, which is different from a state of energy and motion that got stuck in the not now, that needs to be somehow resolved in the now. States of being are actually those energies and motions we've resolved our feelings towards. So now they feel good to us. Contentment upward are where the upward spiral of states of being exist. But the downward spirals of emotion are where we can't actually change the story because the feelings of fear are so loud, we can't get any room to start a new story. So when we hack our nervous system the way that I did, by repeatedly doing what I just shared with you about on the breath in, I closed my body circuit with my toes together, my hand on my chest and my belly, breathing in and basically envisioning love, peace, joy, grace, fulfillment. And then on the exhale, separating. So it's an open circuit now. And now we're releasing fear. We're releasing false emotion appearing real. All that anxiety, depression, all those lower level entities of energies in motion that are connected to stories that are not yours, that came from your tribe, that came from your society, that came from your family, that came from your friends, your lovers, your children, even maybe. Those limiting stories, all of those judgments of you and your enoughness, all of those you're breathing out when you exhale. Let it out. And then you restart. And then you breathe in, breathing peace, closing your circuit again. So now you're circulating what you're choosing, and you're letting go that which you're not choosing, and you're intentionally not choosing it. And then in the space that which you no longer choose is let go of, now you get to have that which you desire instead come into those places. And that's how you fill yourself. 211, new beginnings. You can do this. You intentionally choose to see yourself as the guard in the energy den of you. And then you start to see how you are the Garden Eden. The Garden of Eden is in you. Now it's making sense. Yay. Yay. I'm very glad for that. Yay. Those energies in motion are just looking to move. They needed to move in the past and you didn't know what to do with them. So you said, get down, I don't like you. And whatever you freaked out at them, they held on to that story. And so when that story shouts at you again, breathe yourself through it first off. Because ultimately it just yelled at you because you yelled at it and it thought that was how you were supposed to communicate. Your energies in motion are not sophisticated. They don't have a conscious mind. They only feel. And feelings are only ever happening in the present now moment where all energies get moved. So if those now moments of the past you suppressed before show up with momentum saying, hey, let's get me going too, because I don't want to be stuck back there or wherever that was. I just don't want to, I want to move. I'm energy. I need to move. That's what your emotions are. Essentially, little characters within you. They're personas, personalities, masks. they show up and it's just like sometimes you feel like your day's been completely overtaken by the anxiety, for instance. Well, it's just a really loud character within your house because you let it, because you were afraid of it. And so everything bowed and cowered. And oh God, this is the part of me that's showing up. I got to get away. I don't even like myself. How could anybody else like me? And then we judge. How's that actually going to help us resolve that which wasn't solved before? So it's just showing up now to be solved. Be gentle with yourself. When you feel like something is needing some love, you give it. My lips were feeling really dry in that moment. And I knew I had a solution ready by. Because the problem is always nearby the solution and vice versa. We just have to develop eyes to see it. And then we can see the tool that is available to us to be able to use, which you now have access to. Because if you are going to choose to fill yourself intentionally with that which is going to support you and let go of that which does not serve you, but did at one point. And here's the thing, that anxiety served you. For as long as what you've had that anxiety, it has served you, or you'd have found something better sooner. It's not convenient. It's certainly not comfortable, but it's limiting you. And did you know that was what you intended to do? Not intentionally, not consciously, specifically. But did you know that there's a part of you whose greatest fear, that your deepest fear, is that you are powerful beyond measure, that it is actually your light, not your darkness, that most frightens you? When you ask yourself, who am I to be all of these great things? And your response is a child of God, and you say, what? You are one of the Allah. The all law, all one, only starts to feel alone when we confuse the love with lies. And then it starts to feel very lonely indeed. When we collapse the all one into alone, why not bring the love back in and see how all of those anxiety moments, those moments of anxiety, that those actually helped some aspect of you that was afraid of people seeing you, seeing the real you. What if you had a previous lifetime, many, I would imagine, where you actually got persecuted because you spoke up, because you stood in your power, you got persecuted, you were killed, you were hung, you were burned at the stake as a witch, proclaimedly, which what is a witch but a woman or man who wields their power wisely and is able to create seeming miracles by bringing more of their energy present to this now moment, where others say, how can you be so lucky? Who are you to do those things? And they were the ones that planted those stories. And you, maybe? We bring all of it with us. It's the gestalt, that whole energy system of the BS, the belief systems that run in the background. So when we start an affirmation, we say something 5 or 10 times a day, and then we wonder why we still have that old pattern still playing out in our lives. And we're like, but I'm doing my affirmation. This program has been going around in circles in the background the whole time I've been talking, even when I wasn't talking about those patterns. And it'll continue doing that the entire time, because that's what our mind chatter does. The mind is a trap. And if you're in a trap and you organize the other things that are in a trap, and you dust and polish and you get it spick and span and sparkly, you're still in a trap. And how good is that? Because that's what the mental health system is going to keep you trapped in. From my experience, personally, I would be open to have a conversation with a professional who would like to tell me that I am wrong. But from lived experience, all of the concentration on the verbal masturbation of how-to solutions, like what I'm offering you right now, maybe you're enjoying watching. Maybe, right? That's what the verbal masturbation piece is. It's like, it feels really great to me to share all of my BS. Are you taking it? Are you leaving it? Are you working with it? Are you playing with it? Are you thinking about it? What are, those are the things when I share my BS, it feels really good to verbally masturbate. But a lot of these theories, that's all it is. Because until it has legs to be grounded, it doesn't really feel good for anyone else because it's not practical. And we need practical tools in this life. Our energies in motion need to be grounded and also be free to be elevated also. We just have to recognize that our sentence structures have a lot to do with our energies in motion too. We just weren't taught that because intense emotions are showing up from a past tense or future tense in the present tense, where all tense is able to be resolved because we have tense muscles, right? When everything's constricted or contracted, and once it's expanded, it's no longer so tight, yeah? So recognize the anxiety is a way to keep you contained, keep you tight, keep you safe, keep you alive. The part of you that's afraid to let go of the anxiety was the part of you that didn't know what to do in the moment it felt helpless when you were 19 and you were freaking out and you stopped trusting your body, maybe. Some part of you is holding that pattern in place because it's been serving you. It did serve you then. And if you create a new pattern while you feel safe, the next time those energies and motions show up to be resolved that feel like anxiety, you can either do what you've been doing and get more of what you've been getting, or you actually create the story ahead of time, aka now, where all time is happening, about how you're going to respond, which is what the active choice point theory is about in Fully Committed, the Sacred Sojourn of Now. You're actually choosing because something will always happen. You're not going to get away from something happening. And you're going to get the emotions and the feelings and the stories that come up with all of that. But then we get that choice point. It's like in that choice point moment, which is what now is. We get to choose whether we're going to do what we've always done and get more of what we've always got, or we're going to choose to do something new and get something different too. So I hope that you are willing to use that concept to actually choose a new cycle. Precisely. You're choosing a new cycle. You're choosing to do something different. It's like the Gestalts. A Gestalt is a pattern of belief. It's a paradigm. It's a belief system. It's a whole bunch of connected ideas that come together, like with the myth of Christmas, for instance, and everything that goes with Christmas. That whole concept is a Gestalt. And when that Gestalt comes into the moment, it's just like, we can't separate Santa Claus from Christmas because they are interconnected. But actually the myth and the man are separate, and then the Christmas and Christ Mass connection, all of it is just reflections of bigger belief systems or patterns that all fit together that bring ideas and concepts together. And so it's like that Gestalt is going to show up, and that Gestalt can be right here. So it doesn't take very long for it to come back round. And then we're down and dirty playing in the mud with it again, right? But it's like every time it comes up right here, instead of getting down and dirty and doing what we've always done and getting really emotional and down in the emotion of the energies in motion that feel really depressing and oh my God, it's so heavy and deep and that it's just like again, something else is happening. Oh my God, why me? Right? And it's just like, instead of getting there, what if we just like moved it out a bit? It's just like, then we can see the finger a little bit more. And every time we touch it and go, instead, we move it out further. We have a greater perspective of it. And we also have the ability to connect with others in a way we never have before, because that is part of what the gift your anxiety is giving you, is offering to. Maybe before this situation where you went through it yourself, you didn't know how to relate to somebody with anxiety. Maybe you didn't have the capacity to support the one that was going to need you, that is going to still need you. Maybe you didn't have what it took to support them before you went through this. And now, when that moment comes up, you're going to show up fully equipped and ready and able to actually be there for them because of all that what you went through and now you've learned to be able to face and deal with, to be able to say, hey, this is what has worked for me. I don't know whether it's going to work for you, but hey, use the tool. Close circuit, open circuit yourself and see how that works for you. Is it a tool that you can use and put in your toolbox? Because that's your war chest. You put your armor in there. You use the tools in there. If A, B, C, I choose plan A. Go for it. J. Ron, awesome to have you here. Magnetic, positive to negative. You want to be on the inverse instead of the reverse end of the cycle. It just depends which cycle or system you're using as to what all of the values actually mean, right? But it's cool that in this community, we've got people that are starting to connect and know one another too. So I absolutely love to see your comments. I appreciate you for showing up. I'd appreciate if you would share this message with someone who may be struggling with their emotions and the energies in motion that are ultimately brewing within. And I do trigger people. I'm someone who activates energy generally because of who I am and how I show up. But just however it goes, just be warned that when you share something with someone that they may not be ready for, then you can become the scapegoat, like the ones that were called witches before, right? I've tried flipping the magnets. Two of the same can't stick, just like feminine and masculine needing to be balanced. Yeah, well, that was last week. Jordy and I read the gateway process, read the first few pages. I think we got through 13 pages out of 40 of the gateway process report, which was the CIA's report after 20 years of pushing people to their absolute limits to be able to see what we are capable of. And from what I understand from years ago when I read it before and want to go back to it, which is why we're going to do another one soon. We just need to get it figured out. And there's a lot of other stuff going on right now. But basically the gray matter and then the black and white matter of the brain are all components to all of this story. But you do have the masculine and feminine sides of the brain, and then actually how that connects in with trauma. Jordy Lishman would be able to speak into a perspective of German New Medicine that I am finding fascinating because of how he says that, you know, when young boys are being boys and then they get criticized, condemned, abused for doing that, it actually it short circuits their ability to balance the hemispheres, I believe is how he explained it, but he would do it better because he's more familiar with this concept. But it's just generally little boys that get criticized for being little boys and playing with toys and getting dirty out in the mud and all of that, then kind of get looped into this one-sided, the masculine side, or to compensate, or they go into the feminine side instead because now they got in trouble for being a boy. So now it's like go into the feminine side of the brain and maybe I won't get in trouble there. But then when you get in trouble on the feminine side too, it's like, where can I go to feel safe? So anyway, with the right and left hemispheres of the brain, there's a lot of power there, for they are where the temples are stored, right? We have been told to go worship in, to be divided by the religions of BS that would make us think we're talking about something different when all energy is all, which means the exclusion of none. So there is nothing that is not all one. But who's speaking like an expert anyway. We're all just trying to do our best and say, hey, energy, right? Cannot be created nor destroyed, only transmuted, changes form. Substance needs to change form. That's what the legal fiction uses to create diction that calls for jurisdiction over the man or woman that gets dropped into, converted into a status that converts the original into something aboriginal, which ab means from or away from the original. So the man or woman is no longer an original, but are a status that is what is being done rather than a man or woman doing the thing. The status is what is done is then put into the subject. So we stop being we start to be the subject of the sentence compared to the man or woman doing the thing. And so these are the little vernaculars of the English language that are just, when we start thinking about them in terms of how they've been weaponized against us or for us, depending on how we are willing to band together to actually go down to whether this is good or not for us specifically, and then also looking at it from the larger perspective as well. But we really do need to start evaluating things with a different lens collectively. And I don't have the answer specifically, but I'm doing my best to find those answers. And actually, you can mark your calendar. I haven't even made the meetup date yet, but on December 5th at 7 p.m., it's a Monday night, I'm going to hold the first Cultural Evolution series. And I'm going to be highlighting a new connection named Joseph McDonald that has the Loving Society Project, which is basically a system of thought that is to create a loving society so that when the systems collapse as they've been and identities fall with them, we actually are equipped with training to support one another through it, which is what the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Community and Initiative is all about. It's always been designed to train and equip people to lead themselves, and that requires knowing how to stand as well, which is what I've learned largely through my journey with the summons, and also because of everything I had been through within the mental health system, within the workplace, my perspective of the insanity of this whole place. Like even when I was in grade 8 and the Gardasil shot came out, for instance, I remember just intuitively not wanting anything to do with something that hadn't been around long enough to know what the ramifications would be like for the population in 50 years. And yet, years later, because everyone else got it or didn't question it, or, I finally succumbed, and who knows what the ramifications of that are. But I've had issues because of that since, I believe, because there's not good things in there. And I am also aware that as the powerful creator, I need to actually clear out the fear that I've been storing as to allow the destruction within me that would be because of that which was in what was not organic, that came into me because I consented to it, which obviously I'm talking about in 2009 when I got these shots. So no one can say it's anything connected to the certificate of Vex entity, the ID, what was it? Identity death AI as the 1 and the 9. But it's just, the point is, one of the things I was going to do a little short on today, but maybe we still can. It's not a Vex. Like, we already know that because trials have not finished until next year, at least for one, right? Of the company, the corporate substances, corporate products. And you even have to talk in code in order to converse about such things, just as the mafia of the past used to have to do when talking about illegal activity. But now it's just so mainstream, you actually have to talk about the truth in secret, almost, or with a whisper, to make sure that others aren't offended. So that's why I call it the certificate of Vex, with an E for the energy we have given the entity, and to say that a Vex or anything that is vexatious is to cause annoyance, frustration, or irritation, which definitely this whole thing has been. So it's fully true. And it also compensates for a grand lie that so many have bought up till now and unfortunately are paying the consequence for. But ultimately, judging anyone that has chose one way or another doesn't help us together in the long run anyway, really. So how beneficial is that? Etymology and law dictionaries help with decoding their word magic. Yes, indeed. German, Germany, the history is intertwined into everything. I use Grimm's Fairy Tales. It's a book of archetypes relating to the criminal law elements. Is that what it is? I got read, or my dad had Grimm's Fairy Tales while I was growing up, and I remember it was in my closet because that was the storage closet for the house upstairs when I was in the bedroom upstairs. And the Grimm's Fairy Tales was in there, and I had no idea that it was archetypal. But did you know that the 22 major arcana cards are also archetypal and represent the hero's journey from the very beginning, where the fool sets off on the adventure? And you obviously have the inverse meanings when they're upright, and then you have the reverse meanings as well when they're flipped. And the fool can be the fool that haphazardly steps off the cliff to his doom, or can also be the one who vroom vroom got to meet the magician because he accepted the adventure or accepted the call for adventure and then got to ride the broom of magic that the now moment will zoom us into if we are willing to actually go with the flow. So I appreciate each of you who showed up today. It was a longer message than what I had specifically intended, and yet at the same time, I really wanted to touch on the notion of a vex being what causes frustration, annoyance, or irritation, and that being a good substitute that is truthful to what we've all been going through collectively. To also say there is no us versus them. We're all in the same storm. It's just we're riding different vessels, and we have to make sure that we not only look after our own, but also those that are in our midst. Because when the waves get pretty wonky and those ships are crashing, we need to be able to work together to make sure that our boats don't crash into one another, right? All major writers have pushed boundaries with language. Yes, yes. We are on the edge. We are on the edge of someone else's knowledge. They tell us that is the edge of what you are supposed to know. My BS. Take it, leave it, work with it. I'm just kidding. I'm not attached. But seriously, knowledge is the edge of the knowledge we knew. Wisdom is the wizard's domain. And that's where I wish for you to claim the right to live your life. Because when you do, that's when things get real, real nice. I look forward to that being the reality you get to experience as the conscious co-creator of your life. The one and only there will ever be of you is what you have the opportunity to write the script for. I hope you will be the major writer that pushed boundaries with language and wrote a script that you love living, because you're worth it. I send you love. Thank you. Peace out for today. Lover J. Namaste. Namago for today.